Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Nielsen conductors. Now, this is a rather interesting category because Nielsen still tends to be kind of specialty repertoire. He's never been as popular as Sibelius, and indeed, I think his music is considerably more difficult in many respects. Not because it's inferior in any way, but because it's so what it is. It's very, very characteristic of its composer. Nielsen is the modern day or late Romantic day Beethoven. He really was. He has that same sort of energy, that drive, that completely focused sort of goal-oriented technique. In these days, or those days, particularly, so many symphonies began with slow introductions, or they took forever to get started. Nielsen usually starts with a bang. Symphonies 1, 2, 3, and 4 all just explode, and then they just move, and then they never let up. And they're extremely sinewy. There's an austerity to his symphonic writing. It's not sexy. It's all energy. And focused energy, and you have to really listen to it with that in mind and listen to it carefully. I think it's thrilling. It's as exciting as anything anybody ever wrote. Even the Fifth Symphony, which begins, with such a lazy sort of opening, but it rises to a climax that's absolutely volcanic in its intensity, and thrilling. I mean, if it doesn't give you a chill, then you're dead. But it's hard for a lot of conductors to wrap their brains around. Why? Maybe because, especially conductors who specialize in romantic repertoire, are used to doing stuff to the music, to, manipulating it. And we'll see that in a minute, actually, how that can happen. But if they don't, if they focus on the rhythmic element, on balance, and on keeping the music moving, on motion, that feeling of inexorable forward motion, they're going to do great. Unfortunately, that seems to be difficult for most conductors. You'd think it would be simple, but it's not. It just isn't. So here are the 5 greatest Nielsen conductors. First, Theodore Cuchar. Now, Kuchar did a Nielsen cycle with, one of those Czech orchestras over there, one of the not great ones, and he made them sound great. Kuchar almost never puts a foot wrong. He's a lot like Charles Mackerras in the sense that virtually everything he does is musical and smart and exciting, and he understands what it wants to do and how to get there, and Nielsen is like that. It may not be the greatest played Nielsen cycle in the world, but it has all of the right elements. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it's very exciting as a result, and powerful, and rewarding, and inexpensive. It's on Brilliant Classics. So that's definitely worth considering. Next, Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein is in here for one reason, I have to say, because he wasn't a Nielsen specialist. Bernstein was a generalist conductor. He could do anything superbly, and he could do anything horribly. And in Nielsen, he does both. His recordings of 2, 3, and 5 are pretty good. 3 and 5 are superb. They were the reference recordings for many, many, many years. So that's why he's here. And he made 3 in Denmark, which was a major event in Denmark in bringing Nielsen back to the attention of Danish audiences because, he was really considered just sort of a local figure. And in some respects, people still treat him that way, not as an international symphonic genius, which he really ought to be. I mean, God, he's at least as good as Elgar, for heaven's sake. And Bernstein demonstrated that in his fabulous recording of the Espansiva, number 3, and his number 5 with the New York Phil came out of nowhere, like a bolt out of the blue. Ka-chung! It was remarkable, and still is. A beautiful, beautiful performance. Fast and thrilling. And if you do fast and thrilling in Nielsen, you're in very, very, very good shape. So after Bernstein, also with the New York Philharmonic, Alan Gilbert. Now, Gilbert, got very little attention as conductor of the New York Phil, and the reason was because by the time he took over, all the major orchestras had no recording contracts with major labels anymore. And so it was a very exciting thing when Da Capo, the Danish national record label, decided to do the Nielsen cycle in New York with the New York Philharmonic. And the reason they decided to do that is because of what Leonard Bernstein had done decades before. And they rose to the occasion magnificently. Gilbert's interpretations are big and brash and unfussy, which you must have. Nielsen has no time for fussy. You can't fuss with Nielsen. The sonics are super. They did the 3 concertos as well. It's a magnificent Nielsen cycle. It really is. It doesn't get a lot of attention, doesn't get a lot of play because Nielsen doesn't, number one, and records don't, number two, and it's just sitting out there. But it's pretty terrific. Next, Michael Schønwandt. Now, Michael Schønwandt did the last Nielsen cycle before Gilbert for Da Capo, but it got transferred to Naxos, where it's superb. It's with Danish forces. You can hear how much they've improved since the early days when they were doing this music, for example, with Herbert Blomstedt on EMI. Schønwandt is another really fine conductor who hardly puts a foot wrong. The only thing you might want to say is that in a couple spots, maybe in the finale of the fourth or the first movement of the fifth, it could be just bigger, more violent, just an extra rush of adrenaline. But he's not underplaying the music in any way, no way whatsoever. And the performances are really, really beautiful. So he definitely deserves the accolade as one of the 5 greatest Nielsen conductors. However, in this case, I have saved the best for last. Sakari Oramo with the Royal Swedish something Orchestra. He did it in Sweden. Let's put it that way. For BIS Records. Now, BIS already had a Nielsen cycle. It was a patchy one. You had Chung doing some of them and Järvi doing some of them, and the Chung ones were much better than the Järvi ones. Because Nielsen requires a certain tightness of rhythm and discipline that Järvi didn't impose on his orchestras usually. I mean, it's not that Järvi was bad, but it's a perspective thing. Your approach. Oramo does it all. Oh, wow. These are exciting and bold and gloriously played and magnificently recorded. And if you have not heard this cycle, you really owe it to yourself if you care about Nielsen. And the interesting thing is that Oramo is not usually a conductor who's full of individuality and personality particularly. He's not bad. He's quite capable. But, there isn't something you listen to and say, aha, that's Sakari Oramo. No. But here, he just is on fire, which just goes to show that everybody has their specialties, their individual qualities, and the right music can bring those out. And they certainly come out here. So give that one a shot. And those are the 5 greatest Nielsen conductors. I can think of maybe 1 or 2 others you want to put on a list, but there aren't that many. And I'm not going to tolerate any second-rate names on the list just because, Alexander Gibson did a fabulous Nielsen 4, and he did. It's my reference recording. That doesn't make him a great Nielsen conductor because he did a very tepid Nielsen 5. At least Bernstein had 2 under his belt. So be smart in making your selections, and we'll see what shakes out. I'm very interested to know. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.